All right, Algebra 1A students. Welcome to part 2 of lesson 1-2. Today we are going to be talking about evaluating algebraic expressions. Now, in our last video, we looked at the order of operations and we looked at simplifying a numerical expression. Simplifying meant getting one single number answer. So that was always our goal, to get one single number answer. And it still is our goal today. But we're adding in one step, and we're changing what we're calling this from simplifying an expression to evaluating an expression. So evaluating, if we look at our definition here, please make sure this gets in your notes. Evaluating an expression is to replace each variable, like each letter in the expression, with a given number, and then do what we were doing in our last video, simplify the expression using the order of operations. Okay, so the only thing we're adding is that we're going to have some variables, some letters involved in our expressions, and we're going to have to replace those with given values that the problem will give to you. So for example, if they ask you to find the value of the expression for x equals 5 and y equals 2, there's your given numbers from up here, right? It said with a given number, here's our given numbers right here, x equals 5 and y equals 2. Okay, and they give us this expression here in letter A, which looks kind of complicated right now, but I promise it becomes less complicated here in just a second. So it says right now x squared, which means x times x, plus x minus 12 divided by y squared. Okay, so we have obviously x's and y's involved in this expression. So the first thing that we're going to do, step 1, is this replacing. So that up there is step 1. Step 1 is to replace. Okay, replace each letter, each variable in the expression with its given value. So instead of x squared, notice we now right here we say 5 squared because x is equal to 5, right? X is equal to 5 right over here. So because x is 5, we say 5 squared instead of x squared. Then instead of plus x, we say plus 5. Minus 12 stays minus 12 because that was a number to begin with. No letters there. But then instead of dividing by y squared, we're going to divide by 2 squared. Okay, instead of dividing by y squared, we now divide by 2 squared. Okay, and then we just start following the order of operations to simplify down to one number answer. First thing in the order of operations is parentheses or grouping symbols, but there are none here. The second thing is exponents, so we do 5 squared and 2 squared first. 5 squared is 25, 2 squared is 4. So now our problem here, or now our expression here, says 25 plus 5 minus 12 divided by 4. Now the next thing we need to do is multiplication and division. Well, if we go from left to right, the first multiplication or division that we come to is right here at the end, 12 divided by 4. So I do 12 divided by 4 and I get 3. I now have an expression that says 25 plus 5 minus 3. Now we add and subtract from left to right. Remember, always go left to right. 25 plus 5 is 30. Minus 3 gives us 27. So our final answer for the value of this expression is 27. So when x is 5 and y is 2, this crazy long expression ends up equaling 27. Okay, so that's what it means to evaluate an expression. We take the numbers they give us, put them in for the letters, and then simplify just like we have been doing. Okay? Now, I'll give you another example. Here, they have x times y. Remember when two letters or a letter and a number are right next to each other, we know that's multiplying. So x and y here are being multiplied together. So here they're going to do x times y. They want to square that and then divide by x times y again. Okay? So x times y squared divided by x times y. Okay? Well, notice here we have two sets of parentheses around our x, y's. So even after we replace the letters with their numbers, so instead of x times y we say 5 times 2, instead of x times y we again say 5 times 2, notice the parentheses are still there. So according to the order of operations, that's what we have to start with. So we do our parentheses operations first, which would be 5 times 2 here, 10 squared. So instead of 5 times 2 squared, we're going to say 10 squared. And here, instead of dividing by parenthesis 5 times 2, we'll divide by 10. Okay. Now we have 10 squared divided by 10. We do the squaring next. The exponent comes next. Okay. 10 squared is 100. 10 times 10 means 100. And we divide by a 10. So 100 divided by 10, we get a final answer of 10. Okay, so that is evaluating an expression where we plug in the numbers for the letters and then simplify with order of operations as we have been doing. Okay. I would like you to try a couple. I have 2 expressions here for you, letter A and letter B, and I would like A to equal 3 and B to equal 4. In each expression, instead of an A, put a 3, and instead of a B, put a 4. Okay, so let's not call this A. Let's call this number 1, and let's call this number 2. Okay, that'll be less confusing with our letters. So evaluate these 2 expressions here when A is 3 and B is 4. So pause the video, take a minute, evaluate those expressions, then come on back and I'll show you what we should get. Okay, in number 1, in the first one here, 3 times B is 3 times 4 minus A squared, which is 3 squared. So 3 squared is 9. 3 times 4 is 12. 12 minus 9, we should have 3 for number 1. Number 2, we have 2 times 4 squared minus 7 times A. So 4 squared is what we have to do first, which is 16. 2 times 16 is 32. 7 times A, which is 3. 7 times 3 is 21. So 32 minus 21, we should have 11 there for number 2. Okay? So hopefully evaluating expressions is not too bad for you, especially because really all we've done from the last video is add 1 step. Now I'm going to add another step here in our last example, where I'm going to give you a real world expression. Okay, so I'm really going to give you a scenario, a story, and I'm going to ask you to write an expression first. So number 1 is going to be to write your own expression, and then number 2 is going to be to evaluate the expression for different values, probably 3, maybe 4 different values even in your practice problems. Okay, so the scenario that they give us here is that we want to save 2/5 of our weekly wages, of our money, and have the rest for spending money. Okay, so 2/5 of our weekly wages. 2/5 of, and then having the rest left over for spending money. So the first thing I need to do before I can evaluate an expression is actually write one. So we have to think about what this scenario would look like in numbers and variables and math operations, math language basically. Okay? So when we see having the rest for something, we should always think of minusing, having something left over. So having something and then taking some away so that we have the rest for spending money. Okay, so we know for sure this is going to involve minusing something. Okay, and we want to minus off this 2/5 of our wages piece. Okay, so it's going to be minusing this 2/5 because that's what we want to put away. That's the money we don't want to spend. So we take our wages and we put that stuff away, take that away, and whatever we have left is going to be our spending money. Okay? So that's why we see it's minusing this 2/5 of our wages when we start relating this to math stuff, to math expressions and things. So we're going to use W as a variable for wages. Okay, W means wages. And the key for us is that this word of right here, whenever we read of in a sentence or in a scenario, that always means multiply. Okay, that always means that we're going to multiply. Of means to multiply. So 2/5 of wages really means 2/5 times our wages. Okay, 2/5 times the wages, because of means multiply. 2/5 times wages. 2/5 times wages. And we said originally we wanted to take the wages we get to start with and minus off 2/5 of our wages. Okay, so let's look at what it says now. Now our expression is W minus 2/5 times W, right? W minus 2/5 times W is the expression that we wrote for this particular scenario, okay? And now we can evaluate it just like we've been doing for different values of W. So they want us to do it 3 times. They want W to equal 40, they want W to equal 50, and they want W to equal 100. So each of those we'll just plug in to our expression down here and simplify using the order of operations, where we will multiply first and then minus away, okay? So if we look at each of these, 40, 50, and 100, so we'll scratch out the 75. $40 in wages means wherever we saw a W in our original expression, here at the beginning and here after our 2/5, needs to be replaced, right? Remember that evaluating means replace. So we replace W with a 40, 40 minus 2/5 times 40. We do order of operations, which says to multiply first. So we times 2/5 as a fraction times 40. We end up with 16 there. And then 40 minus 16 gives us $24 total. Okay. Now, if you're unsure how to multiply by a fraction, you can turn the fraction into a decimal first by treating the fraction bar like a divide symbol, right? So if I were to do 2 divided by 5, it ends up equaling 0.4. Okay, 0.4. So we can just multiply 0.4 by 40, 0.4 by 50, 0.4 by 100. Okay? And then that should make that multiplication easier, and then we can just multiply and subtract. And we can see that when we do it with $40, we're left with 24 to spend. If we have $50 in wages and we take 2/5, we're left with 30. And if we evaluate for $100 in wages, we're left with 60. Okay? So these 3 are all one number answers from evaluating and then simplifying this expression, where we replace the W with our number that we're given for W, and then we simplify with order of operations. Now, if you have questions specifically about evaluating the expression or about writing an expression yourself from the scenario, please make a note to ask me in class tomorrow. Otherwise, that's all I have for you tonight. Have a wonderful night.